Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of Topline. We are joined this week. AJ Bruno has returned from his team offsite. We're so glad to have him back.
I'm back.
We've also, of course, got Asad, CEO of Sales Talent Agency, and we've got the legend on the show this week, the founder of the customer success category, in my opinion, Nick Mehta, one of the co-founders and CEO. Actually, you always correct me on this, but the CEO of Gainsight for sure. And the man that built it from nothing to something. But I don't know if you're a co-founder. Did you?
Not a co-founder.
Yeah, you stepped in after a time to become the CEO. Is that right, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, it's a complex story where I was going to start a company in the CS software space, and I was an entrepreneur in residence at Excel Venture Partners. And then through Battery, another VC firm, I met these two founders who had basically started a company in the CS software space. They did a demo, like a beta, but no revenue. Well, $100,000 of like kind of pilot revenue. And that was in early 2013.
Welcome to Topline, the podcast for the best founders, operators, and investors in B2B tech. Every week, AJ Bruno, Asad Zaman, and me, Sam Jacobs, will break down what's important for you to know to be the most well-informed professionals in the market.
Your deal is almost closed, and all that's left is the security review. But when it comes to those lengthy questionnaires, the endless back and forth can often cause deals to stall out, leaving your deal at risk and dollars on the table. With Vanta questionnaire automation, go-to-market teams can complete security reviews up to 5 times faster, helping you close deals in less time than ever. Visit vanta.com/topline to learn more about questionnaire automation.
Wow. And now 11 years later, Vista Equity acquired the majority of Gainsight, 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Almost 4. So, yeah.
Oh God, 4 years ago.
Exactly.
Well, welcome to the show. We're super excited to have you. Asad, AJ, how is your team offsite? Welcome back to this estimable group.
Oh, it's so good to be back. I missed it. I got a lot of FOMO last week. I texted you guys. I was like, hey, are you filming? I happened to be available. And you're like, we filmed yesterday.
It's over. It's over.
Missed it. Offsite was great. It was just a great chance. I think we'll all share in this, but anytime you can get your management team together in 3 days and just be completely heads down is a epic experience and a great opportunity. A lot of planning for 2025, of course. We had hired, I've talked about him on the podcast, our chief product officer, Wyndham Hudson, had joined us. So this was his first time joining the full management team. And just, really, really excited. Nick, interesting side note on the story of like you joining Gainsight. My first company was a company you may have heard of called Trendkite. We were Gainsight customers. Yeah.
A customer, totally.
Yeah. And in our Series B, my co-founder and I started the company in 2012. In 2015, we brought on Eric Huddleston as the CEO to join the company and join the organization. And, it's really interesting to I stayed operational. I was founder and president and ran all go-to-market and sales through about 40 million in revenue before we got bought by Cision. But it was always a really interesting dynamic culturally intersection where founders and CEOs and the number of times I had to bite my tongue in the room. But at the end of the day, it was you hired a CEO for a very good reason, and we had a fantastic outcome. So
awesome. Congrats. Yeah, what a great, I remember that company, very PR software, right?
PR analytics. Yeah. I had started my career at a company called Meltwater, which was a competitor.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So left Meltwater in 2012 to start a direct competitor, Trendkite, against.
Nice. I'm sure you weren't on the Christmas card list at that point, right?
I joined Jornless again. Was not very friendly. One other intersection we have is that Pablo Dominguez is on my board, and
I love Pablo so much. He's such a great guy.
Pablo's awesome. He's so great. He hanging out with him in Austin during our board meeting last month, and I know he wrote a great book that you're quoted many times or in a lot of books. But What a Unicorn Knows, Pablo and Matt May wrote about their time at Gainsight and the customer journey that they had. So
Thank you. Yeah, awesome. Great connections.
Yeah, great connections. So I'm doing really well, Sam. How about yourself?
That was smooth.
Any other points of commonality we should
Sam and I, we're both Yinzers.
Rough
We're both
landing
Yinzers.
there.
We are Yinzers. Sam and I met a long time ago too. So lots of
we met 10 years ago at like
You're
the second
texting.
SaaSter.
Right.
And you walked in and you were the belle of the ball then too. And I was just a lowly little CRO. But yeah, we've known each other a long time. We always appreciate your contributions, Nick. Asad, you haven't had a chance to speak yet. So why don't you kick off, why don't you kick off the docket? What are we talking about today, my friend?
Nick, we are excited to have you. Lots to discuss, but let's start with a lay of the land. So I was thinking about CS over the last couple of years, and a few things were just coming back to me. The first thing that really stood out was when COVID hit. And Sam had released a report. I think that's when Sam started the Pulse survey that goes out quarterly. I think you were doing it monthly at the time, Sam.
I was doing it weekly at the beginning of COVID.
Weekly, yes. And it was really helpful. So I remember this one data point in there, which was at the peak of COVID when everybody was laying people off. 53% of companies, I believe, were reallocating staff into CS. 32 or 38% were still having to hire into CS. And I think what the takeaway there for me was that when things got really rough and growth was not there to be found, and we really remembered we were recurring revenue businesses and had to hold on to as much of that revenue as humanly possible, we looked at the teams and realized they were understaffed, they were under-resourced. And so then we supported them. So that was one thing that stood out. Then the next was the vibe of last year, which was, obviously we were going through a tech recession, but there was a lot of conversation around CS. We had Lemkin on the pod, and he said in the green room at SaaSter, everybody was talking about two things, or at least the CROs were talking about two things. One was getting back into the offices, and the other was CS is broken. And that was give and take around the time where the conversation around Snowflake's point of view on CS became pretty mainstream as well. And there was a lot of debates about, was CS the way we know it just this phenomena of a low interest rate market, but it doesn't really work. And look at how tough things are right now. And so there was a lot of blame, a lot of finger pointing, some rightfully, some wrongly, but there was a lot of finger pointing going on. And now, as we are in 2024 and the market stabilized and things are improving, I was looking at some data this morning, and median GRR had dropped to under 90% for most stages in private companies last year. It's rebounded into the 90% range. Other than for companies that are above 50 million in ARR, where it's sitting at 83%, that's interesting. Median NRR is around 100% give and take. So things are improving now. And I guess the place to start would be just your reflections on what has played out in the world of CS over the last couple of years, lessons learned, things that really stand out to you, and how that's informing your point of view on how things are going to evolve next year.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of great backstory there and questions, Asad. So I'll try to take a few things kind of one at a time. So the first one I think is, this sort of fact that in tough times, people double down on CS, which I think is the last few downturns it has happened, COVID, and then this sort of post-SERP downturn. I think that I think most of us would probably agree that it is tough to just wait for some bad thing to happen and then focus on CS. Because the reality is, if you have a 1 or 2 year contract, if you focus on CS when the customer is about to churn, you're literally not going to have that much of an impact. And so I would say whatever people do, they need to think of it as a sustained investment, right? Even if they don't do CS, or they do a small amount, right? Like, I don't think it's very effective to do it as a last minute resort.
Why do you think they do that?
Because all of us, I think the basic issue is, like, I thought a lot about this. CS is sales, but it's like sales with a long-term horizon. And I think that when people have their backs up against the wall, either because interest rates being higher forces companies to focus more on the short term, or like companies within their own business have just not been run well, they're running out of money or whatever. They, like in both those scenarios, I think it's easier to cut things that don't pay off right away. And CS pays off over time. Now, what else pays off over time? R&D. Like that's exactly the same thing. You could totally decimate your R&D in a software company and be like, short term, my profit went up, right? Like everything you work on is for the future. And so I always think of CS in some ways more like part of the product. So the product, when a customer buys from you, is both the technology as well as the way they get value from the technology. Now that includes the customer support, might include onboarding, might include ongoing CS, but the product isn't just the software. And so therefore, Asad, I think people cut back because they want to focus on whatever drives value right now, and CS pays out over time. I'll come out, talk a little bit about the sort of way CS needs to evolve in a second, but I don't know if you have any other questions or comments on that.
No, that's the thing we're looking to chat about.
Yeah. So I think the key thing is then what do we do going forward? And, it's funny, like, of course, the Snowflake question, for people that don't know, Frank Slootman was one of the CEOs of Snowflake, legendary CEO of ServiceNow, CEO of a company called Data Domain. Incredible, like just like the Michael Jordan of SaaS, right? Like so it's hard to even question and say he's wrong about anything, but he is wrong about one thing. So I'll just say it. Even though he's a billionaire and flying on his private jet right now, I will say that there's one thing he's wrong about. And it's not the spirit. If you read his book, there's a chapter on CS, which I tried to tune out, and eventually I kind of got myself to actually read. And it says, CS is overhyped and things like that. But
by the way, when you say chapter, because that book is like 100 pages, it is like he's very, very like to the point. You said it's overrated, Sam?
Yeah.
He is, or the book is?
No, the book is. He's not overrated.
He's created the most enterprise value.
Barely a book. It's just like a bunch of memos stapled.
Everything is like 3 pages, but it's very to the point.
Anyway,
literally, we're all like, we're in danger right now, Sam. We're all getting into the eye of the billionaire. If you're listening, Frank, I don't agree with what these guys said. I
think you're great.
Exactly. I think you're the best. But what he says, it's interesting. He says like CS is everyone's job, right? And like that, you don't need a CSMT. And I think this is one of the important distinctions to think about as we talk about this, which is you've got like CS as a strategy, right? Make our customers successful so they renew and expand. I don't think there's anyone in the world that would be like, that's a bad idea. But then do you need a team or not? And actually, the truth is, sometimes you need a team, sometimes you don't. I think he paints with too broad of a brushstroke that you don't. And I think the thing that Snowflake had that's amazing is they just had this consumption-based model that naturally grew, and they've done an amazing job and continue to innovate with AI and things like that. But it's a business that, frankly, most of us don't have. Like it's interesting because there's a play on words there where you're like, Snowflake is actually a snowflake. It's not like the rest of us. If it was, we would all be billionaires flying in our private jets, right? Maybe Sam is right now, know where you are. But
part of that you think is like super unique.
I love that he thinks I'm a billionaire.
Yeah, exactly. Well, come on. I'm not going to presume. What makes it unique is the consumption-based model and the fact that it naturally grows. It's a genius. What's that?
Is that something that, as we're shifting more towards consumption, is that something? Because there's 2 parts of Snowflake. One is extreme product market fit.
Extreme,
right? But Databricks, which has overtaken them in terms of valuation and momentum, has a CS function. And it's the same business, right? It's literally the same product, same type of product market fit, same pricing model. And they have a CS team and they're doing really well and they benefited from it. Then the second part is the pricing model. Yeah. But over there, the interesting thing is more and more companies are going to pursue that pricing model in the coming years as they lean into AI, as AI enables them to provide outcomes and then charge accordingly, because you can essentially charge more if you're charging for an outcome versus the passing of time, right? Yeah. And so a lot of people are looking at that and saying, well, that's the lesson, that if I shift here, then I should not have a CS team. What's your view on that?
Yeah, it's actually interesting because I think you were kind of leaning there, so I'll just kind of double down. I think a lot of it is a choice. So the choice is the following. Do I want salespeople focused on like making sure existing customers are getting value, which takes away time for them to go sell new customers or drive new workloads or whatever? Or do I want salespeople really focused on growth and new stuff, not just the consumption of what's existing? And if you look at it, like Microsoft, Amazon, Google, in different ways, have CSM teams with like massive consumption-based businesses, right? Because they want the rep to go on to the next workload or the next customer, and they want the CSM to focus on the growth of the existing workload. And Databricks is the same thing. So I think in some ways you can make a choice. You could say, I want my salespeople doing all that. I will say, a little funny anecdote. I spoke to, actually, I'll give you two anecdotes. One of them was, I spoke to a former employee Gainsight who went over to another SaaS company, probably similar size to us, a couple $100 million revenue. And this other SaaS company was a Gainsight customer like 6 years ago. And they used Gainsight really well. And then eventually they canceled their whole CSM team. The CEO decided to axe the whole CSM team. And basically then this person came over that I know went over to this company, and he was traveling around Europe meeting the salespeople. And the salespeople were like, why don't we have a CSM team? We had to focus so much on existing customers. And then this guy was like investigating, and literally, I kid you not, this is what happened. He went to CEO, and the CEO's like, yeah, why don't we have a CS team? Now that CEO is the one that fired the whole CS team. Yeah. So I forget that part, the short-term memory. But in that example, it was showing that it really does shield people, the salespeople, so they can focus on growth. But just to give you another example, then I think tips into what we need to do to change, because I think CS needs to change, like massively, and I'll talk more about that. But just to give you another example, so another customer of Gainsight and public company, and they were using Gainsight really well, and then they fired before they fired their CS team, I actually randomly was on like a Boone Godbowl CEO ski trip thing, and I was talking to this CEO of this company who I know a little bit, and I'd probably had a couple drinks, so he might have had 7 or 8, and he was talking to me and said, Nick, like, I want you to know, I just don't believe in customer success. And I was like, okay. I thought we were just talking about skiing and like what we did today, but sure, let's talk about this. We had a heated argument on like the shuttle bus back. Anyways, I told my team.
By the way, on those shuttle buses, because it's like the seats are so high, and then you're really in a cocoon with the person.
You really
are.
With discussion as well. A lot of
I got to get our shuttle bus with Frank Slutman, but we'll come back to that. So
45-minute trip back to the lodge.
Exactly. So this CEO basically, that's what I told my team. I'm like, yeah, I think these guys are going to like cut their CS team and turn Gainsight. Anyways, so we had it at risk, and everyone's saying, yeah, blah, 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 it's at risk. They fire their CCO, they fire a bunch of CSMs, but they give it all the remainder to their pre-sales team, like their head of pre-sales, and they merge CS and pre-sales, 2 different roles under the same leader. And the CSMs are more technical now, like versus more just relationship. And now they love the CS program, and they use Gainsight a ton and things like that. And so the point I'm telling the story is, I think CS still matters. It needs to change. And they argue there's really a fork in the road, maybe a 3-part fork in the road. There's 3 ways that CS will be sustainable. So one way is it is people that are really technical, that deeply understand the product and get the customer to value. And this is, for example, an infrastructure, software company, security. You do not want relationship people in that job. You don't want people that are just like setting up the meetings and like organizing things. You want like somebody who can really connect with the customer at a deep, tech level. The second way is CSMs and account managers merge. And some companies have done that. Like DocuSign just did that, for example. Their customer MCS, they call it CSAM. And then they have a commercial responsibility, and then nobody questions the value because it's like literally driving, sales or renewals or whatever. Yeah. And then the third approach is you really make it digital. And it's a digital first approach. And we think most companies should do some of that, and then maybe add on people on top of that. So commercial, digital, or technical. I think those are the only ways to do it going forward.
Nick, when does a non-technical CSM work? Because I've seen companies that have gone into this extreme relationship-driven approach. And I think on the technical side, the technical CSM is still proficient in building a relationship, but there's so much other value they can bring to the table. And then you have these relationship ones that are just annoying. Like they're annoying. They just want to set up a million meetings.
Totally.
Superficial relationship. You feel dirty at the end of an interaction. Like it doesn't work. So like, why are companies still doing it? When does it work?
It doesn't work. I mean, if the product is not technical at all, it could work, right? But yeah, it doesn't work. I mean, basically, this is the problem. There's a lot of CSMs out there who are very nice people who can forward the email from the customer to the person who can actually help them, right? Who can organize the meeting. In some ways, I hate to say it, but it's a little bit more like their assistants, right? And
that's a waste of money. Right? Like that's a company that's burning money.
Does this impact the roadmap for Gainsight, Nick?
Yeah.
Maybe you're bleeding into like new use cases where maybe like actually sometimes less functionality is needed, but more visibility or visualization or dashboards, and then you give it to like a smart person to customize their own workflow, like you just to tell you. Go ahead.
No, totally. I mean, I think if you think about the three branches I talked about, commercial, technical, digital. So like the commercial side, yeah, definitely huge thing. You know, we built this thing called Renewal Center that's all just about the commercial side. And then the technical side, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, Sam, you're right. Visualization, in general, product data. Like, so we have very deep like product instrumentation. We can pull it from other systems. We also have our own. And then you look at digital, and that's like the big, we'll talk more about AI, but the sort of digital AI, how do you do more of this in a fully automated way? But going back to Asad's question, I do think that at a fundamental level, you really need people who know the product. If you're you got to add value to the customer. You got to have an interaction that doesn't feel annoying, like you said. There's some of you guys might have seen Office Space, like the movie. I don't know if you guys have all seen it or not, but there's this scene where he says, what would you say you do here, right? And the question is, what would you say the CSM does? And I think what Frank has seen, which is, I think, logical, is a lot of companies where the CSM is just the relationship nice person. And that is not enough. You know, I know, interestingly enough, ServiceNow, after Frank ran it, has a huge CS team now. So actually, it's a pretty interesting story. But the CS team is very focused on product value. Like, they're not focused on just general relationship. And I think over time, people realize the relationship person is a salesperson. And you don't need another relationship person.
Yes.ai enables your CEO, subject matter experts, and other senior leaders to engage prospects directly, creating meaningful connections and boosting response rates. With just one click, your team can strategically involve senior staff to make your outreach more credible and effective. Empower your GTM team to orchestrate your outbound process and say yes to yes.ai. That's YESS.ai.
Then, I mean, the other thing that Frank talked about at the very beginning, it was within the first 2 pages, was around compensation, and it was rallying around MBOs or whatever. He just got rid of it and said, no, it's just going to be NRR. Right. Well, at that point, then your team is a customer success, customer relationship. Like, it's all galvanized around that one thing. And I think that that's the point that probably gets missed is you're going to have a dedicated CS team, but everything around the company revolves around the voice of the customer anyway. So that's what we're going to point and comp everyone off of as well.
Yeah, I think that. Oh, sorry, AJ. One thing on that, I think that's totally right. I say my company, if you're a salesperson and you got a quarterly quota, and frankly, you'll get fired at some point if you don't hit your quota. It's hard to get them to be like, why aren't you focused on this renewal that is a year and a half away? Actually, literally, we're dealing with this right now, where we've got this huge customer and they could be huge upside, but they also could churn. And it's a year and a half away. They're using Gainsight really well, but there's a build versus buy. And I'm super involved because I'm the exec sponsor and our CSM's pretty involved. And the salesperson has kind of mailed it in, but he's great. And I talked to him and he's like, dude, I have so many accounts and I got to make my number for the quarter. And I've seen Gainsight part ways with people who don't make their numbers. So what would you do if you're me? I'm like, yeah, what would I do if I were him?
It changes when you're in a consumption model though, right? When you're in consumption, you're solving a little bit differently because you might be signing on a customer with zero upfront cost.
Correct. Yeah, it's very different.
In a consumption model, you have to think about a few things. One is, how do we pay these reps? Because they're signing
Financial
customers
model.
on today.
Yeah.
And we're all projecting, forecasting that
Yes.
there's going to be a
Yeah.
certain spend. We can't pay off the forecast.
No.
We also want these people to go and find the right type of customer to sign on. And so we want a portion of that tied to retention and renewal, because our business model is now so tied to the future upside of this account. So I think a lot of it is the nuance of the pricing model and how that changes the job of a salesperson from sign a customer, sign the paper, move on, to you're involved for the first year. You're trying to help get this momentum going. And so you have to tie some incentive to that creation of momentum for them. But at the same time, not distract them from what is the job, which is new business, right? So that's a nuance over there.
That's well said.
Do we think the days of CS, to the point of the middle, the first one was product knowledge, the second was commercial acumen, and the third was digital customer support, in terms of your three branches? There was some period of time where people said CS shouldn't be comped on upside. It should be really NPS or some kind of customer health score. Maybe they own the renewal, but like in sort of a loose way. And the context was, these aren't commercially oriented people, and that's okay. We can have people that don't want to ask the customer for money. They just want to help the customer. But I think the middle ground that you articulated, to a certain, even as Asad's saying, right, we're talking about usage-based pricing, and we're talking about like a dedicated person driving up usage and getting the customer to use the product as a direct translation to revenue. Is the debate settled over whether CS should have commercial acumen? And is it basically, I can be glib, and in my glibness, I could say, I can't have anybody talking to the customer that doesn't have some kind of commercial perspective. That I just don't have the capability in my organization to have somebody that can't sell, but gets a lot of face time with the customer when face time is at a premium.
Yeah. Sam, it's so well said. This is definitely one of the core issues that we need to change. And so I'll say something that's very direct and polarizing. We're not recording this, are we?
Absolutely not.
This is always a conversation between the three of us. We say anything you want.
AJ's head of sales, Ryan Burke, and Kyle Norton are the only three listeners, as far as
we only have.
All right. Thanks. I'll say, no, I think this purist concept in customer success is wrong. I'll give you the purist argument. Well, it's really about helping the customer, and it's really about long-term value, and it's about the relationship, and it's not about transactions. And if I do that, I'm losing my trusted advisor status with the customer, right? And it's just a purist argument that, like I don't know about you guys, but at Gainsight, we're not running a charity. We are trying to run a business, that makes money. And I think one of the issues with ZERP is it created this belief that that doesn't matter for whatever reason. We lost that in sort of the insanity of the last 10 years. So in this world where you got to make money, it's not that you need to be transactional, right? And by the way, great salespeople are not transactional. They're not. I love salespeople. They I don't like this whole negative stereotyping of salespeople. I think it's a really hard job, and it's super important, and none of our companies would exist without them. And so I think when you think about a CSM, having commercial skills is critical. So there's a decent number of companies now that give incentive for leads that CSMs generate, which I think is they call it customer success qualified lead. I think that's actually a good idea. There's not really much of a downside. And then Sam, I think that in this world of it's either technical or commercial, if it's technical, then the reality is that you better be darn focused on adoption, and know that adoption ties to renewal and expansion, right? And so you really one of the things I think, by the way, most sophisticated companies are doing, and we've done this ourselves, is very detailed statistical analysis of what actually in adoption is correlated to retention expansion. And this is not an easy problem, by the way. You could take an Excel pivot table and say, oh, this is correlated to that, but you have to actually look.
It's a correlation, deeper. Right? Doesn't mean there's a causation.
And you don't know causal, and you could certainly run experiments, but that takes a while. But you could do stuff in between, kind of classifiers where you kind of branch data to figure out what is the most predictive. Anyways, I think, Sammy, you have to have something driving long-term commercial value, and ideally something driving short-term. So the long-term could be adoption with real clear tied retention, and the short-term could be the renewal could be leads generated, could be expansion, could be you're in a pod with the salesperson. But yeah, I would love to eliminate this idea that CSM is just about the customer and anything you talk about with your product is bad. Because you know what? Like one of the things I always tell people is if you believe that selling to your customer is bad, then you're working in the wrong company because you don't believe
in business. Like, are you a business?
Like, go to path, right? Like, I'm sure all the people in your company hopefully believe in what you do, right, AJ? Like, they otherwise
100%. If not, I'd stare at them and stare into their soul until I make sure that they passionately believe in sales compensation. No, Nick, I think you're hitting on the things. It's like, as far as this category and where the category's gone, a couple things that you've said. One is this like idea of a crisis and companies going and investing in customer support. But you said something previously on a previous podcast around like traditionally your boards, your investors have said like, go hire people to fix this problem, go hire all of these things. And that has it's just changed. Like we talk about this weekly of like, so we all feel like we're like kind of stuck of like, what is this world going to look like?
Yeah.
And the area that feels like a huge disruption as we're talking about is customer success and support. You think about Intercom or Help Scout and their pricing models and per user kind of going away with AI. You think about like just LinkedIn jobs. If you just search sales versus customer success, it's a 500x right now to sales over CS. And so like the technical aspect of it, of like, we're talking about this technical person, a lot of people think that could just be a co-pilot. So like your point of view on 2025 as we head into it, we're painting a pretty positive picture, but is that still the feeling that you have and that you're talking to with your team?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's got to change a lot. And I think, AJ, one of the things that's interesting is the throwing people at the problem has stopped, right? Because frankly, just most companies aren't hiring that much. And sadly, and I feel for the people affected, there have been huge number of layoffs, right? So hundreds of thousands of people have been laid off in tech, and then they're not as much.
We haven't hit the roller coaster back up.
No. People are starting to say like, we don't want to go back up in headcount that much because every company needs eventually be pretty profitable, not just break even, right? Though we don't build businesses to be break even. You build them to generate cash flow and earnings, which is what creates the long-term enterprise value. And so the way I think about it is these I call them I'd say 5 steps in this journey. So step 1 is like what everyone should be doing, which is how do you digitize as much of the customer journey, right? And of course I'm biased because Gainsight does that, but like put aside how you do it, how do you get to the point where you're saying, do we really need people to solve this problem? Or can we create even pre-AI, just a one-to-many journey, nurture-based emails based on behavior, in-app communications, all those kinds of things, right? And people are doing incredible things with that. Like Okta is one of our customers, and they have this amazing digital journey for the customers that aren't like the very large ones. And it's, based on what you've done in Okta and how sophisticated you are, you get different emails. And, so I think that first step is like that digital foundation. And applying it, by the way, to all your customers, not just your small ones. Certainly with your small ones, you can offload responsibility from the team. And that on its own, you can get your team 10% more productive pretty easily by just
Have you seen that be 10%? Because I find my skepticism comes into play when I hear that. So let me push back a little.
Yeah, please do. It's good to be.
The average number of SaaS applications used per department in large organizations is 73.
Yeah.
73 SaaS applications per department. Operations has 73, somebody else.
Oh, per department. Wow. Jeez.
Per department. And so I think of that, and we wrote about this in the Topline newsletter, that how much context switching is happening and the cost of having to toggle between all these different apps is significant. So now I think of, you've bought something new. You don't buy it in a vacuum, and it doesn't operate in a vacuum.
Yeah.
And so you've got all these digital things going on at the same time as sales teams are spraying and praying their way through the market.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing is that the inbox is becoming more important because the communication is going to come over there. But my view of the inbox is it's going to become harder and harder to manage right now. Nick, how many emails do you get in a day?
I don't even know. I mean, hundreds and hundreds, but yeah.
Hundreds and hundreds, right? That's going to, let's say, 2x. And so you sign up with a new product and you're getting all these cool emails. The chance of you seeing it, the chance of you being able to action it, it goes down. So that digital side to me feels like a real risky move where as noise increases, these digital approaches become harder to bring value out of. What's your view on that? What's your
perspective? Oh, I think you're right. And I think this is where spammy digital is a negative value. So what we believe is you need to have a journey based on what the customer is doing right now. And that has to be highly coordinated. So the best companies have marketing and product and CS coordinating together. So marketing's not sending a webinar invite at the same time product has an in-app communication at the same time there's an email about an EBR. That's like the big thing. Because otherwise, Asad, what you said is right. Everyone will just tune you out. They'll stop reading your emails, etc. Now, I'll give you an example to make it very tangible. So, a lot of products have an in-app communication, right? We made technology there. There's other ones. And you log in and there's some kind of message, right? You guys have all seen that. And most people, I think everyone listening has seen that at some point in their app. Now, what's interesting is if you just looked at like the product management organization of a company, they're like, I want this new feature adopted, right? And so I want everyone, then they log in to see this thing that talks about this new feature. And I see this when I log into apps. And honestly, I'm like, dude, I could care less about that new feature. I just want to do what I need to do. Yeah. And so the key thing is showing the thing that's relevant to that customer. So as an example, for our own customers, when you log in the first time, like if you're a customer, you'll get a little thing that profiles like what type of role you have. Are you an executive, admin, CSM, whatever. And then we'll only show you content relevant to you. But by comparison, I'll log into some products, I won't say which ones, as the CEO, and they're showing me stuff that I'm like, they're like, what's new in release 3.2? And I'm like, I could care less. Like, I mean, I'm sorry. Like, I respect that you guys are trying to drive adoption. So Asad, I think the key thing is coordination around what the customer cares about. Now, just to hit the rest of the AI, the next phases of, I think, what's going to happen. So the things that are very low hanging fruit, the people are doing today, whether it's Gainsight or otherwise, is efficiency. So can you make it so your CSMs have to do less manual work? And that'll let you not hire as many. And so we have things like automated meeting prep using AI, automated note taking, all these, I call these commodities at this point, email writing, but they actually will literally save one of our customers recently said that they're saving 15% on that. So it's like they can hire, 1/8 of a less on CSMs versus what they would have otherwise. And that's
such a big point because you can optimize for quality with lower numbers more than you can with bigger numbers. So if you have in a team, you can actually have a better shot at hiring great people into that team.
Well, it's interesting, Asad, just to give you an example of that quality point. So by having some of these efficiency tools, you also give the person, as you said, more time and more context to be high quality. So this customer, I was at a lunch a couple of weeks ago in Seattle, and this customer said that they have a big team in Costa Rica of CSMs. That's another dynamic, by the way, is people trying to build CSM outside of high cost centers. And that team is sending way better communications to customers because they got prepped through AI. And the customers are responding more because those emails are less generic. They're more personalized. Okay, so efficiency. Next one is what we call not getting blindsided, right? How to use AI to always know the true early warning. And we bought a company called Staircase.ai, does this. It takes all your communications, your emails, your video meetings, et cetera, runs it through LLMs. The idea is that today, when you think about CSMs intervening early, lots of times they're intervening late. Because if you think about a lot of products, when the product usage drops, your fate may be sealed, right? They may be moving off your platform. Or if your NPS is a 0, it may be too late. And so what's interesting is early in a customer journey, customer lifecycle, there's often frustration. Hey, I bought this product, I'm onboarding. God, it doesn't do what they said it does, right? Or there's too many workarounds, or it's too hard to manage. A lot of those show up in human sentiment in a call, like a frustrated call or an email. I mean, the common email we always talk about is, hey, AJ, we love your product. We love Quota Path. It's awesome. We love working with your team, but we're starting to look at other solutions. Right now, like a naive sentiment analysis or a junior CSM might be like, okay, well, that's fine. Like, let's go work with them to solve their problems. And the reality, you should pull the alarm bell there. So you can do a ton around using AI. And this is, I mean, honestly, it's been mind blowing to me because I use this particular product all the time and I get alerts in Slack about, sentiment. And you just see how much happens in a customer journey that you don't see, like if you're just looking at the superficial metrics.
Yeah.
This early,
Interesting you say that.
Latency is like a huge indicator. Just if the time between actions is expanding beyond a standard deviation, you're like, that is a change in behavior.
Yeah. Sam, it does exactly that of like frequency of communications, response time, formality of tone. Like if somebody's very formal, that's a negative thing because good relationships are less formal. Are we multi-threaded in an account by looking at how many communications? So there's so much you can do by using AI to analyze communications. AJ, you're going to say something else?
No, I just got off a call with one of our customers just literally right before this. And he was a VP of RevOps. And he was like, look, AJ, we've used your product successfully for 2.5 years. Love what you guys do. We have an incoming commission analyst that we're going to be bringing on. And when I asked the CX rep, like, who do you know? It was very much like, hey, we can just do this for you. You don't need the person. But like what I was really doing and saying and signaling and saying, hey, we're growing as an organization. We have to have this person who knows QuotaPath really well.
Right.
And you have any referrals? Like I said, I wave my hand, I jumping up and down. And specifically I'll just tell you transparently, that's an early leading indicator that we were going to churn if we don't find this person.
Yes.
And that was missed in the process. And I was literally like, man.
If they hired the spiff person or whatever, some competing.
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
Or exactly person.
Yeah.
And that's like, that is a really interesting change in what's going on in SaaS. Like this is maybe just my point of view and I'm projecting a little bit, but as we grow up, like our CX team has to really understand what these early indicators are to really show value in what they're doing, because it's not just about implementation or NPS or using a tool that will give you all the session data or whatever. You really have to earn your keep by being on top of these, and like that's an area where AI actually could possibly help in a lot of ways, and something else like you got to think about.
What's interesting is that the AI enables the human in the loop in a lot of these cases. If you're SMB, SaaS, sure, you could like AI the hell out of your business.
Right.
But for everything that's not SMB, it's more so enabling the human to be able to be better. And hopefully, as we are evolving and learning lessons as the market evolves, we're learning that this purist approach, what's interesting about the purist approach for companies at scale, there were some companies where it worked, right? That's why it became a common thing to do, because lessons were learned that, that purist approach.
Yeah.
Those are probably the same companies that could not have had a CS team and done fine as well, because the product was so strong and they were doing really well, irrespective of how they decided to organize the teams. But we're learning that we need a technical person. We need a person that is not just technical, but can build a relationship as well. And we should probably toss them with renewals and upsells, etc. So we're learning these lessons. But now you are in this transition point where the way that we have hired for CS and how you pay people and how much you pay them has a lot to do with who you can hire in these teams. Yeah. That approach is still in the past. And so right now what's happening is CS leaders are going to finance and saying, new way of doing this. We're going to give them a target. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. But now I need to pay them a 35% variable. Now the base salary goes higher. Right. Finance is like, didn't your GRR drop last year? Like, who did you lock for more money? And so you're at this really strange point where I'm noticing companies are transitioning the strategy with the old people, which is just a disaster waiting to happen. No. That's a huge issue right now.
I think you said it so well. Yeah, I think that, and you're right, like the companies that did grow up with a purist model could have done anyways. And interesting enough, by the way, like Gainsight didn't create the CS category, like Salesforce really created this original concept. But it's super interesting how they went from like having these CSMs that you get if you're spending enough money to now you have to pay for it as a part of a package. Yeah. Literally you don't get it without it. Now, just hitting closing out the AI points. So two more, I think the next two frontiers. So there is the idea that can I use AI to get to the point where whoever I am, I can tap the whole knowledge of the company and I can kind of break the silos. Today, you think about like, how many silos how many pieces of the customer journey are there? I talked to an SDR, I talked to an AE, there's an SE that comes in, maybe there's somebody figuring out the onboarding process, running the onboarding, technical part of the onboarding, CSM, maybe there's a CS engineer, there's a renewal rep or account manager, there's support people along the way, there might be a training person, and it's insane. And the only reason these exist is all of these silos of knowledge. And so the idea of like a co-pilot, and we have one, and there'll be others as well, that helps a CSM or anyone, a salesperson, tap the whole knowledge of the organization. The customer asks me X. I don't know the answer to X, but actually I can ask this thing. And by the way, there's really cool use cases like which of our customers have done X with us, because a customer wants to know who are your top users of this so I can talk to them, right? So this co-pilot to break the silos. And then I think the most exciting thing, and this everything I described so far is there today. We have it. There'll be others as well. I think the next frontier is how does AI truly automate? And my belief, I used to think, oh, AI will automate. We can automate the job of the CSM. I think that might happen over time, and it might happen to all of us, right? We'll be replaced by AI podcasters at some point, I'm sure, right? Notebook LLM can kind of do this now, right? And so, but I think what will happen is that we will not automate people, but tasks. And this is the concept of agents, right? So some folks don't, if you don't know, it's an agent is using an LLM or some other AI technique, but then using it to execute a discrete action and having the coordination of the agents potentially be done by AI. And so you look at what's the job of a CSM? Well, you might be doing things like running an executive business review, handling an escalation, driving adoption, right? Things like that. And so take each discrete task. We're looking at data that we have on where does the CSM spend their time? And then which activities are high value or low? Which ones can be easily automated by AI? And so one of the things as an example we're working on is imagine a fully virtual delivered it through the web, an email, or an app EBR. That's like, let's say 5 minutes. And it's actually like an AI video with the face and voice of the CSM, right? Or salesperson or whatever. And it's actually walking you through your personalized usage and value you're getting, right? And we're starting to work on this now. It's definitely not science fiction. It's like incredibly possible today. And so I think what we're going to do is take the discrete activities of a CSM, but also all the other roles, and see which ones are high value and not. And then I think the end result, Asad and others, is to allow the humans to do what only humans can do, like where we matter. And a lot of these tactical things can go away, So it's actually, to me, going to be really exciting for everyone working.
That's super fascinating and exciting.
I think it always sounds great for the super talented people. Like we're all fairly creative on this call, and we're all well equipped, and we can talk about privilege or anything like that. But nevertheless, like there's always this question of like what do the less talented people do in this new world, and what is their role?
And this is a whole nother podcast, which of course I'm not an expert. I will tell you, if anyone wants a useful read for their future, read Player Piano by Kurt Vonnegut, which is it's an old book from like 20, 30 years ago. And he wrote about like a society where all jobs have been automated. Initially, it was really more manufacturing jobs. People used to think that the like physical labor jobs would be, but there's this really powerful quote, which is, they said this guy who was like job has been automated, he still gets paid a government wage, but he doesn't have as much meaning. And he says in the old world, it was easier. Like the people that had privilege were wealthy people, and you could become wealthy potentially. And the new world, the people with privilege are highly intelligent people, and you can't become highly intelligent, So yeah, there's a whole different issue, which again, I'm absolutely not expert on.
Nick, going to what you just mentioned, the AI strategy is very interesting. And obviously, as agents are becoming more prominent, one of the things we're realizing is the more context and information that agent has to pull from, the better support it can be to that business. And so I wonder how you guys are thinking about, you guys on the customer success side, and then there's in certain businesses, I imagine there's a CRM that's doing everything before a customer signed on, and then Gainsight after. And so till now, you probably couldn't think of like building a CRM out because you've got these large incumbents and what a headache to go after that market. But now, in a world where you did have a CRM built into this, there would be huge advantages to your customers of you being able to pull from all of those different moments that matter in a customer's journey and feeding your agent with all of that extra context. Do you guys, A, think of this as an opportunity to rethink the type of platform you're building, A, and B, if a customer is evaluating you versus Salesforce today, and Salesforce is pitching that I have all this context, you're already on the CRM with me, buy this from me, you have everything. How does Gainsight approach that conversation to win that deal today?
Yeah,
and C, there's a C, which is how hard is your hard stop?
I've got a hard stop. Yeah, I was going to say, this is such a great conversation. I'll answer it briefly, Asad. Yeah, I mean, it's so funny because in the beginning of Gainsight, like we're like, hey, eventually we could be a CRM, and we're not yet. I think that I think one of the things that, like, if I'll say two things I believe. One is I do think the linkage between pre and post sales is legit, right? What you just said, like that over time needs to happen. Gainsight could be part of it. Could be Gainsight integrating more tightly with other stuff. So I think that's very legit. Now, I think though that the like source of data, interestingly enough, it's not what's in the CRM because that's all like manually entered data. Manually entered data is going to go away. I actually think the gold mine is purely recorded communications, right? Email is obviously part of it, and calls, and great companies like Gong, which we integrate with, and others. And so I think that this call recording is actually the gold mine, not CRM. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Nick, thank you so much for joining us. We know that you have to go. Do you have any last minute shout outs or wins of the week? This is the last segment we do before we hang up. But if it's too hard to think of something, we can let you go. But it would be nice if you share something.
Shout out and tell me more, like a person or
a person in the company that's helped you, or a customer that you really want to single out, or a great book that you've just read.
Yeah. I mentioned Player Piano already. I think that The Power of Moments is a great book to read if you're kind of thinking about customer experience and all those kinds of things. It's got these two brothers, Chip and Dan Heath. They're great authors in general. And they came to speak at, or one of the guys came to speak at our employee event. And I think the core idea is, a lot of our life is not just a linear experience, but actually these moments that we remember. And you can think about that in the personal side, but those peak moments you can engineer into your customer and employee experience. And they've got some great examples in there. So I think this is a good mix of, the heart and the mind. The heart side is still matters. And how do you inject some of that into their customer experience so they remember you?
I love that. That's great. Nick, thank you so much for joining us on Topline.
Full on conversation. Let's do it again. Thanks so much, guys.
That was fun, Nick.
Thanks. Don't close your browser window. Let it upload, I guess.
Okay.
But I think you can leave. Maybe you can leave.
You go to the green room.
I think
you will get a notification.
I'll just keep it. I'll keep it open. Thanks so much, guys.
Yeah. Thank you. That was great, guys. I think we're out of time. You guys probably have to go too, right?
No,
I'm good.
Oh, that's nice.
I'm making up for last week.
I don't do meetings this early. The only reason I have something in my calendar is you two.
Oh, I have something. Why don't we do shout outs and wins of the week, and then maybe Asad and AJ can record a bonus episode of some kind where they're just chatting with each other.
Sam, what's your shout out win of the week?
My shout out win of the week. I had some good here. Let me just give me 2 seconds.
I'll go. Good. If you want, mine can be like 15 seconds. Ready?
Yes.
Okay, go. I'm actually going to give Nick a shout out. There's entrepreneurs and founders that have an impression. Nick's been at this for quite some time and seen SaaS change the last 15 years. But in 2015, all of the Battery Ventures CEOs and founders were invited to a closed session, non-recorded event that had some spectacular speakers. Meg Whitman, Jeff Weiner, the CEO of LinkedIn. There was the CEO of Zillow, founder CEO of Zillow was there. It was just a fantastic event. There's only 30 founders, CEOs. Nick was one of them, and I sat right next to him. And after every single speaker, he asked, Gainsight had already become a thing. Hadn't gotten bought by Vista yet, but it was along its way. And Nick was just part of the audience and asked really thoughtful, great questions of all of the speakers in just a very humble, obviously you can tell he's a humble guy. And I just thought that was such a unique experience to have Nick Mehta sitting next to me in the audience as a founder, asking Meg Whitman, who was running for governor of California at the time, some really interesting questions. So thank you, Nick.
There we go.
I will shout out Jan Kessler, the incoming, he's head of B2B sales for a company called Preply. They're doing about 400 million in B2C revenue and 30 million in B2B. And he's new to Barcelona after moving there from Singapore. We had a great coffee on Friday morning, and he was getting me really excited about sort of the modern go-to-market tech stack. And he was talking about Gonto and G, the former, I think, CMO of Ramp, or the interim CMO of Ramp, who run Hypergrowth Partners. And we're going to be doing an AI for GTM workshop at the CEO Summit in New Orleans and bringing in the CEOs of a lot of the new go-to-market AI companies, including Nooks and Copy AI and Clay and a bunch of others. And it just got me really, really excited. And Jan is an expert practitioner. So that is and also he's of course, a Pavilion member, and he's taken CRO school and CMO school, and he wants to be more involved in the Barcelona chapter. And it's just really cool. It was great. And then I had coffee with Greg Ratner, and Greg is one of the co-founders of Troops, which sold to Salesforce a couple years ago, along with Scott Britton. And he's another Barcelona native. And we were talking about his journey to Barcelona and mine and all of the similarities. 2 shout outs from Pavilion in Barcelona, Sam in Barcelona, chapter 3.
Barcelona, it's growing. That's cool. That's a really cool group of people in Barca.
It is cool. And they're there, and there's nothing connecting them yet until I got there.
What's up? He's in. I'll go with, I think it's really important to sometimes take a step back and see how you've structured the engine that gives you information. And so what news sources are you tapping into? Do they cover a spectrum of opinions? Where are you getting your data from? I think it's really important how you are adjusting the LinkedIn algorithm for yourself. These are skills that actually the young folks have these days, where they think about the algorithm and how to train it, when to like something, when not to. I think there's a lot there for people. And one of the things I realized was that last year I was looking at tech way too much and not the rest of the world enough. And there are lessons from the rest of the world as well that you can apply over here. And one of them was from the recent comparison of Walmart's earnings with Target's. And so Target had a miss that led to a 20% drop in their stock. They reported earnings per share of $1.85. The market was expecting $2.30. And they got killed in the market. Over the last 5 years, the stock is down 5%. And they spoke a lot about macro. The consumer is weak, macro stuff, the strike, the longshoreman strike, what a headache. This is so problematic for us. Then Walmart the same week comes out, and they had blockbuster earnings comparatively. Their earnings, they had a 5.3% increase in comparable sales. Their adjusted earnings were $1.50 against $1.32. Everything was great on the Walmart side. They didn't speak about macro. They were able to navigate the strike really well. And it was interesting to see a company that's holding on to macro just a bit too long as an excuse, and another one that didn't become too defensive and navigated this economy really well and is winning because of that. So I thought that was interesting. So shout out to them.
That was quite endearing, the way he said that at the end. It's just a little thing that he found interesting in life, folks. That's all. He's just trying to share it with you. Take it or leave it. It's up to you. There's a little breadcrumb on the side of the road. Pick it up, pop it in your mouth if you like. It's moist. It's delicious. Put some cranberries in there. Cranberries.
Some almonds, some raisins.
It's a little loaf. It's a holiday loaf. Would you like some?
Do you prefer raisins or cranberries in your salad?
I would prefer cranberries generally. There's a thing, more
of a vibe with the cranberry.
One interesting thing that's happened is that we all, if you're middle or upper middle class over the last 25 years since Bravo, since Top Chef and all this, like everybody has like a rough sense of flavor combination. So it's like, if I'm getting a salad with cranberries, it's probably gonna have a little blue cheese, probably maybe it'll have a little bit of apple. Maybe there's some goat cheese in there, goat cheese or blue cheese.
Have
Maybe
a little
some slivered
walnut.
almonds. Yeah, exactly. And
Throw a little blueberry or blackberry in there.
He has a hard stop. He has to go, and here we are talking about raisins and salads.
Well, no, I'm
his management team is like, Sam, where are you right now?
I was thinking about this delicious harvest salad. Maybe we'd call it a harvest salad. Maybe it'd be a chopped or a sweet green, it's got cranberries in there.
And episode 86 has run its course, my friends.
I also think raisins just got badly branded because you call a person who looks very like dried out a raisin, and I just think raisins got a bad rap because of that. They're actually
it's
quite
like
delicious.
it's an old, it's an old thing. It's like prunes,
bring back California raisins.
I know they were good.
Ice skating and all of the
harvest
things.
Salad. I'm gonna get a harvest salad. I think I'm gonna get some grilled chicken in that because not a lot of people do that. Sometimes they're just gonna leave the chicken out.
Sam's back in the States. He's going to Sweet Green right now. He's headed to
I'm gonna go to Chop and Sweet Green and Chipotle, and I'm just gonna. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. God bless.
Thanks,
all
y'all.
Of you.
Bye, everyone.
Happy times in your
Happy
life.
Thanksgiving.
We wish you the happiest of happy things.
Oh yeah, happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Happy to you, my friend. Happy to you.
This episode was brought to you by AirCall, the business communications intelligence platform. Deliver a better experience for your customers and your teams at AirCall. That's AIRCALL.io. Save time, save money, and improve performance with a single communications platform.
Thanks for listening to Topline. New episodes come out every Sunday. If you like what you heard today, subscribe so you never miss an episode, leave a 5-star review, and share it with your friends. Don't forget to join our Topline Slack channel to connect with us and discuss the topics we cover with other listeners. Click the link in the show notes. Lastly, if you're interested in joining Pavilion, you can learn more about membership at joinpavilion.com/membership. Thanks again for listening.